I'm sure everybody here is familiar with her. And if you're not, you will be by the time you leave here. So I ask that you help me by standing and putting your hands together for Dr. Frances Cress Welsing.
Good evening, everyone. I am honored to have been invited to speak to you this evening by the Guardian Association of the Police Department for the City of New York, and to the officers and all of the members of that organization. I'm quite happy to be with you. And I was thinking about it, and I don't know of such an advanced police department that has such a group, to my knowledge. So I think we should give them. I'm going to talk about our situation as Black people, and I'm going to talk about racism in Black mental health. Before I go further, I want to share with you that a week ago tonight, I was at the University of Toledo in Ohio debating Dr. Charles Murray on the topic Black genetic inferiority. Well, the real topic of the debate was genetics, intelligence, and race, or some combination of those words. I don't know what he's telling people, but I beat him. I beat him by putting his discussion of Black genetic inferiority in the framework of understanding racism, white supremacy as a global, national, local system of power domination. But before I go further, I want us to have a moment of silence in recognition of the passing of Dr. Amos Wilson, the famous Black psychologist that I understand passed recently. He was such a major and important figure for us in all of his writings on Black child development. And I was just talking about him when I gave a talk last night. And I came here today and found out that he had passed on. So can we just begin with a moment of silence and recognition for the major contribution that this Black man made in the field of psychology. Fine. Racism. We are 5 years away from the 21st century. All of us as Black people must participate in turning the future into what we all believe and know that it should be: a planet and a universe where there is justice. Justice does not exist on planet Earth today. This planet, whether we like it or not, is dominated by the greatest system of injustice, the greatest system of violence that has ever existed on this planet. I believe that we as Black people, the first people assigned to planet Earth, the mothers and fathers of everybody who has existed on this planet, that it is our cosmic assignment in the presence of injustice to see that justice prevails. It is not the responsibility of some singular individuals that somebody might say that's a leader or those several people are leaders. We all must see ourselves individually when we look in the mirror as being leaders in this great counter war against injustice. Not leaders who are doing their own thing, but leaders who want to participate in seeing that the beings on this planet can be everything that the Creator intended for us to be. We may have been that in the past. I am convinced we were that in the past. But a great force has descended on the planet to turn what was greatness, to turn what was the glorification of human beings, to turn that into the highest level of degradation of beings that the world has ever known. It is our cosmic responsibility not just to attend lectures, but actually to see that a revolutionary change takes place on the planet. And I don't mean revolution in the sense that we thought of it in the 1960s, where everybody was kind of tough. But we're creating a different kind of revolution that is based upon every single person that classifies him or herself as black having an in-depth understanding of what this war that is being waged against us is really all about. I have said many times when I lecture that we greet each other by saying, "Hey, what's happening?" And I say we greet each other that way because we haven't really understood what was going on. Because we have been the victims of a massive deception. We have been told, those of us who live in this area of the world, and really throughout the world, we have been told that we are living in a democracy. We have been told that we are in a system where there is equal opportunity for everyone. Tragically, we have been told a gigantic lie, and that lie has been told over and over and over and over again. We are living in a system of racism, white supremacy. It is not a system of equal opportunity. It is a system wherein, let me go to my blackboard. Can you all see this board, or I don't know if it can be seen. Sometimes I think the blackboard is my security blanket. But we have to, each and every one of us, we have to have it clearly in our heads that we are on a planet in which we have been told we are the minority. Let everyone in this audience put it in their brain computer once and for all. That's the first big lie. 1/10 of the people on this planet have skins that are white, only 1/10. 9/10 of the people on this planet, the overwhelming majority, are black, brown, red, and yellow. We must put this in our brain, and even if you find yourself saying, as a minority, check yourself and say, wait a minute, I made a mistake. Because this big deception, training the vast and overwhelming majority of people to consider themselves a minority, is psychological warfare. It's to make the majority feel minuscule in terms of numbers. So repeat after me. The black, brown, red, and yellow people on this planet are the overwhelming majority people on planet Earth. Fine, class. The second gigantic lie is that something is wrong with the genetics of black people. 21 years ago, I debated Dr. William Shockley, the Nobel Prize laureate. He was then a professor at Stanford University. And those of you who are old enough like me remember he was going around talking about black genetic inferiority and that black people should have themselves sterilized so that they will not keep on polluting the planet with our degraded genetic material. 21 years later, we have Dr. Charles Murray and the late Richard Herrenstein singing the same song. In fact, there has never been a period, certainly for the people in this area of the world, the black people, there has never been a point at which people who classify themselves as white did not think that they were genetically superior to people whose skins were black. My grandfather, Dr. Henry Clay Cress, who died in 1909. A short time ago, I had an opportunity to see some papers that were in an old trunk. And my grandfather had written, I never knew him in person. I only knew my grandmother used to say, your grandfather was a race man. That meant that he considered his identification with other black people to be a priority. But my grandfather had written, how dare anyone think they are superior based on their skin being white. Do you see, but this hype about black people being genetically inferior is a denial of reality and a projection. As a psychiatrist, this is what I mean, and I said this last week in the debate, that anybody who goes around saying, I'm superior, hey, did you hear? I'm superior. That person is not really feeling superior. I said superiority always speaks for itself. You never have to wave a banner. But in my attempt to understand what racism is all about, because I wanted to be a good psychiatric physician to black people primarily, because they didn't have all of the psychiatric physicians that they needed. And when I took histories on black patients and found that their problems, whether it was drugs or alcohol or depression or psychosis, was stemming from confrontation with this horrible, destructive force in the environment that we call racism, I said, I got to understand what that really is all about. And so looking at this fact that, wait a minute, these people who put this big lie out that they're the majority are really the minority. And the second big lie that something was wrong with our genetics, but in reality, white skin. This is not Frances Welsing's genetics that I cooked up in my apartment. Skin whiteness is defined by white people themselves, but when they were talking about a white mouse or a white bunny rabbit, not themselves, that this is a genetic deficiency state. It is albinism. It is genetic recessive as opposed to being genetically dominant. So I put those two things together and said, I've got it. This is what racism is really all about. This tiny minority of people whose own scientists have said that white is a genetic deficiency state, and it is recessive, figured out after they ended up circumnavigating the globe. People of color had circumnavigated the globe long before that. But people whose skins were white did not circumnavigate the globe until starting in the 15th century. And when they found out that everybody on the planet was colored, every place they stopped, every place those boats crash landed, it was some more colored people. And the colored people were receptive, kind, and fed these strangers. And they even allowed themselves to have sexual intercourse with the strangers. And the strangers found out, if they waited 9 months, that all of the children ended up looking like the colored mothers. And so they decided, we have a color problem. They didn't have to have a big genetics conference. They didn't even have the formal science of genetics at that point. But they found out that black plus white equals colored. Brown plus white equals colored. So-called red plus white equals colored. Yellow plus white equals colored. And it didn't take high-level intelligence, really, to conclude, what if these men of color got in boats and started going in the other direction? And they landed. And the ladies said their ideal mate was tall, dark, and handsome. They realized that white could disappear. Are you with me? Now, we have been miscegenated out of our minds and brainwashed out of our minds so that we have been sent on a course to try to make black disappear. Is that right? I talked to somebody recently from the continent of Africa, and they said, Dr. Welsing, everybody that I met said, when you go back, will you send me some bleaching cream? That's right. That's right. Why am I so black? But this is simply brainwashing. You see, but the people whose skins were white, and when I was busy decoding racism 25 years ago, one of the things that occurred to me, in addition to the fact of white minority status and white genetic recessive status, was that while we were busy being told The blacker you are, the uglier you are. And if you're black, stay back. And if you're brown, what? Stick around. And if you're yellow, you're mellow. And if you're white, you're all right. See, the black people in London know this, all over the whole world where they're colored people, where there has been a confrontation with whites, or whites have confronted the colored people in that area of the world. They have taught the people, the more color you have, the uglier you are, and get in the back of the line. Because that was the most powerful genetic status. And therefore, the more color you could create with your genetics, the greater the threat you were to white genetic survival. And this is why if you go to the prisons today, will you see black people at the lighter end of the spectrum or at the darker end of the spectrum? Class, what do you see? At the darker end of the spectrum. Now, under white supremacy, we will just learn, well, that's because they're black and bad. No. It's because that quantity of the production of melanin at the genetic level is perceived by the white collective as being the greatest threat. That's why it was easier to let Cubans come in than Haitians. But while we were being taught all this negative about color, and this is one thing that I looked at, gosh, they talk negatively about color, but in the summer and in the winter, tanning is gotta be tan. Gotta go to the suntan parlor, even when there's snow on the ground. A white student told me, I believe it was at George Washington or Georgetown University some time ago, and I was talking to these white students about racism, and the white student said, Dr. Welsing, did you know that we compete in the summer to see who can get the darkest? See, we didn't know that on our side of the track, right? It's like when I went to college, I went to Antioch College, and in those ancient days, 1951, integration was one black girl and one black boy per class. And here I was from the ghetto, from the south side of Chicago, and I saw all these white people the first spring. I was coming back from lunch, and all these bodies with clothes off, not completely naked, but there they were with their clothes off, and I was still shivering. Maybe it was April. And I hadn't seen this before. And I actually stood there, what are they doing? I realized that they were tanning. Do you see, the first time the sun comes out and gets a little bit warm? Last week. Really, I came back to Washington from Cleveland, and I had on slacks and a coat and a scarf. It was 70 degrees. The white people were out in shorts, running all over the district. Do you see what I'm saying? Out exposing. True. We did not understand what this color was, and as long as they could make us think that we were ugly with our color, they could walk around and, as my grandmother would say, be Miss Pretty Girl. Only if we thought that we were ugly. You see, and we've been giving them a lot of support because they've trained us properly. thinking that we're ugly, but we're coming out of that because we are moving into master level understanding of what racism is. And based on our understanding of what it is, we are going to produce the solutions to the problems that we have. So I understood tanning, and I also understood lynching and castration. How many people have wondered, what in the world is that behavior about? I asked that question when I was about 6 years old. My grandmother and my parents were standing in the dining room with the black newspaper, talking in hushed tones about a black man had been lynched. And I remember saying to my grandmother, "Granny, why would they do that?" And my grandmother said, "Some people just have to act ugly." But when I decoded racism is about white genetic survival on the planet, it just popped into my brain computer. Oh, now I understand lynching and castration. Lynching of a black man would occur usually behind saying he looked at a white woman, is that right? Or he thought he wanted to look. Or he was thinking about somebody else looking. This, if the problem is about genetics, maybe some people can't see the blackboard. I put a diagram of male genitalia. If white people are afraid, the global white collective is afraid of genetic annihilation, they are automatically talking about male genitalia. Because these are the testicles, and this is where the genetic material is. Now I hear some ladies saying, "Well, why didn't she put the female genitalia on the board?" Maybe she doesn't know how to draw it. The reason that I didn't put the female genitalia on, because everybody has to master this. This is a very important part of the understanding. Men and women are equal human beings, but we are not the same. The Creator decided that we should not be the same. Males can impose sexual intercourse. If you look around and see all these beautiful different colors, it was because white slave masters imposed themselves on African women. Males can impose themselves, white, black, brown, red, or yellow. God forbid that they should ever think of doing that, but nonetheless, that is factual. Women cannot impose sexual intercourse, or can they? This is a lesson in physiology class. Try it. See, I didn't say cannot entice, influence. I said impose, meaning make. Make the gentleman have sexual intercourse. Even if he says he has to go home. No, you run to your purse and pull out your Uzi. And you say, "I'm going to make you." What will happen, gentlemen? You say, that's correct. See, that's basic physiology. If you frighten the gentleman, really frighten him. So racism is about oppressing all people of color. But it is more particularly about black people. And it is even more particularly about black gentlemen. Because the lady cannot force the white male into sexual genetic annihilation. But the fear in the mind of the global white collective is that the black gentleman can cause white genetic annihilation. So when that white male brain computer looks at the black male, his subconscious is dictating he has weapon, can annihilate me. Must attack it. Cut it off. Do you all understand? So nobody ever has to say, well, I don't understand that. And we more recently had the case of Jeffrey Dahmer's. He was cutting black men up. And he couldn't get enough just cutting them up. He had to eat them, including their genitalia. In addition to working in a chocolate factory. Are those the facts in the case? Those are the facts in the case. Are you all with me? See, we are coming up on what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, Valentine's Day in the white supremacy system and culture. See, that's what we must learn to say. We are coming upon Black History Month in the white supremacy system and culture, so therefore we understand why we only look at ourselves for 1 month. Do you follow what I'm saying? And we look at white 11 months. But we are coming upon the day that is about love, supposedly. What is the favorite gift? Chocolate candy with nuts, hopefully. And because we don't understand the symbolism as black ladies, we say, well, we want some chocolate too. Not realizing that we've got chocolate at home. See, indeed, if you understand what I'm saying, you will also understand why in the white supremacy system and culture, all of the favorite drinks are dark brown. Coffee, tea, Coke, Coca-Cola, Pepsi. And the white lady on TV says, I can't get started in the morning until she's talking to the white man, her husband. This thing. I can't get started in the morning until I have some Folgers in my cup. It's so dark and rich. Is that the ad? Do you all follow me? So let's go back. I thought I had an eraser. Oh, here it is. Because I'm giving this with a little humor, but all of this is serious. All of this is very, very serious because we're talking about what exactly is the nature of the war that is being waged against us that we haven't understood clearly to date, but we are moving on understanding. If we understand the importance of the male genitalia, black male genitalia, as being viewed as that which can cause white genetic annihilation, we will understand the importance of the gun. Police officers. If we look at the front view of male genitalia, it looks like this. The lateral view looks like this. Just think about the lateral view for people who are far away. If you turn that around 90 degrees, what do you have? A gun. A gun. Guns are the most important thing in the white supremacy system and culture. Because the white brain computer says he has weapon, can annihilate me. Must create weapon, can do same thing. You see? In other words, the white genetic material is recessive. It cannot cause black genetic annihilation. But the white brain computer came up with gun, can make gun, and what do they call the gun? The great equalizer. See, these terms are not idle expressions. We treat them as idle expressions, but they come from the subconscious, because the problem, the fear of white genetic annihilation is not talked about overtly. In other words, you don't hear big discussions on TV, we are genetic recessive and we're afraid of white genetic annihilation. You don't hear that being discussed. You just hear everybody needs a gun. 200 million guns in the hands of people in this area of the world, and they're not just in the hands, or mostly in the hands, of people who are classified as black or otherwise non-white. So the great equalizer, and from that awareness comes the term justifiable homicide. Justifiable homicide, somebody might say, well, the definition of that is when you have to shoot somebody. The term comes from people who are in uniform in the white supremacy system and culture, who classify themselves as white, who see a black man and say, I thought he had a weapon. He does. That's where that statement comes from, at the subconscious level. I thought he had a weapon. And then they will say, I thought he had a knife. Or I thought he had a gun. But it comes from the deeper subconscious fear of genetic annihilation. There's no history, as far as I know, of black males in uniform killing white men and saying, I thought he had a weapon. Now, maybe that's because they see better. I don't think so. It's just that the same fear is not in the minds of black gentlemen. It is a fear that is resident in this particular power system and structure. This fear is also manifested in another major activity within the white supremacy system and culture. One of the most important activities If you go by the numbers, what am I talking about?